Folks, there is a hero in our midst. There's a guy over at r/Witcher on Reddit called Pongs, and he has put, or she has put together a very large list filled with spoilers, and it's basically making a comparison of every change from basically the original source material, Blood of Elves, which is what season 2 of The Witcher is supposedly based on, supposedly being adapted from. They've made a list of every change from this book to season 2. Uh, and it's a big list, and I don't know if this is still being edited, but I saw there was other people as well who were adding to this in the comments down below, because there are a lot of changes. And this isn't me taking the time to bash the show, because my last video, it was a bit of a war zone in those comments. I mean, it's still going on right now. People, a lot of people coming in there agreeing with me that, yeah, they completely butchered season 2. This is no longer an adaptation. These characters are no longer acting the way they should. This is really, really bad as an adaptation. Although I do think that the show is still enjoyable if you can manage in your head to separate the books from the show, separate them, just pretend that basically it's not The Witcher, it's just maybe characters with the same name doing some other thing. Really, it shouldn't be called The Witcher, it should be called something else, but anyway, if you can separate those things, I think it's still an enjoyable watch, and I did enjoy most of it, other than a few moments and the finale, which I thought was horrendous. But yeah, there is a war zone going on in those comments, and can we just say, let's not have a war zone. Let's be a bit more respectful this time in the comments. Like, no one needs to be, oh, you're an effing crybaby because you don't like it. Oh, crime. Like, a lot of people are saying that stuff, and I'm like, that's not very fair. Like, I think I'm being pretty fair to the show if you watch any of my coverage. Anyway, enough ranting about that. There we go. We're going to have a look at this list. We're going to go through these changes and see if we can see any more in the comments as well and have a little chat about them. So, Pongs, not all encompassing. Obviously, it'll forget some changes, but here we go. Starting with characters. Volithmir is not in the books at all. Completely new character. I actually thought Volithmir was perhaps the worst part of the entire season. It was really just, yeah, I didn't like it. Geralt wouldn't use Ciri as bait in the books, nor did he. Yeah, there was that really weird scene where he's going and they're hunting that monster. I can't remember what monster it was, but I think it was one that came out of the monolith or whatever. And that's the one that kills Roach. The one that leaves Roach for dead, and Geralt has to... Yeah, anyway, so Geralt would never do that in the books. He cares too much about Ciri. He's too protective of her. Ciri is never possessed by a witch. Volithmir never exists, so yeah. Yennefer does not lose her magic in the books. Yennefer never considers sacrificing Ciri for power, nor does the opportunity ever arise. Nor would she. She really, really cares for Ciri. If anything, in the books, it would be the other way around. Yennefer was almost like she's the one person she would maybe actually sacrifice power for Ciri, not vice versa. Yennefer is not captured by Nilfgaard in the books. Instead, she is blinded following Sodden after taking a fireball to the face from Fringilla. She then spends a lot of time in recovery. Then, on Dijkstra's orders, tails and saves Dandelion from Rience. And so, yeah, that's maybe one part they kind of kept in, was the fact that Yennefer saved Dandelion from Rience, but the way they did that, I was so annoyed as well. Like, it's a really great scene in the book. It's near the start of the book. And, yeah, Yennefer, she goes in and saves him with magic, and she actually hits Rience with magic and burns him and leaves him scarred. I really didn't like how they did it in the show, because Yennefer didn't have magic, and she walks in, this really villainous guy, he's this mage, he's so powerful, he's set up, and he's blowing, Yennefer comes in pretending to be a drunken wife. Like, it was, what's going on there? And then, okay, all she does is, whoosh, what? She just blows the fire, and it was really, regardless of what you think of the books, not even comparing it to the books, that was just a bad scene. No one ever thinks she's dead in the books either. Geralt does for a minute, if I recall, but finds out rather quickly that she's still out there. Yeah. Later in the series, post Time of Contempt, late Season 3 or Season 4 by comparison, people suspect Yennefer of being a Nilfgaardian spy, but at no point does anyone suspect her of being a spy following Sodden. So, a big thing here is maybe what they're doing is they're almost moving things too quickly. Like, they've not done the setup to actually make people think, oh, she's a spy, she's this. They've not actually done the setup for it. Like, it made no sense. Like, why would they think she's a spy? She literally just engulfed their army in fire magic. Like, this forbidden magic they're calling it. I mean, fire magic isn't actually, it's not ever explicitly said it's forbidden. In the books, all it's ever said, in Blood of Elves, is Yennefer says to Ciri, she forbids Ciri from doing it, but it's never actually said that it's forbidden in magic. So that's another difference between the books and the show. But yeah, it's like there's no actual setup, and it doesn't make any sense because why wouldn't Yennefer have just burned all this army, risked like being like cast out and whatever? Like it just doesn't make any sense why they'd think she was a spy. Anyway, the Stregobor stuff isn't a thing in the books. He's there but plays no important role. Yeah, I don't even remember Stregobor from the books other than from the A Question of Price short story in The Last Wish. That's the only time I actually remember him. And they adapted that as the first episode of season 1. Vesemir wouldn't try to use Ciri's blood to create more Witchers in the books, nor would he ever allow Ciri to undergo the trial, nor would he let Eskel bring a bunch of hookers to Kaer Morhen. Yeah, that was a big one. The way... Vesemir, I liked Vesemir. I liked Kim Bodnia as Vesemir. But it's really unfortunate that they tried to do this whole Ciri thing, trying to make her a Witcher, almost teasing. And I feel like that was maybe just almost for people who didn't know anything about the series, like, oh my god, they're going to turn Ciri into an actual Witcher. When in reality, she never actually becomes a actual Witcher. But yeah, Vesemir would never even for a second consider it. He would not even let Ciri convince him. It made no sense. It's like fan fiction, honestly. And the whole thing with the hookers and Kaer Morhen, the whole place, it's supposed to be this hidden private place. And in the book, there's only like 4 Witchers who live there, and they get to that later in this list. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Eskel would never even do that. It's not even a matter of Vesemir letting him do that. It's Eskel just would never do that. In the books, Dandelion is actively working with Dijkstra and the Redanian Secret Service, Dandelion being Jaskier. It is implied that Dijkstra is funding Dandelion's Sandpiper activities, though Dandelion doesn't seem to be aware of who he's working with. This is speculative on my part, though. Yeah, they had initially written this as removing the show. I thought it was a bit strange because Dandelion, he's very loyal to the North in the books. He's very loyal to the Northern Kingdoms. He doesn't like Nilfgaard, and he doesn't really try to help the elves this way. He's very much loyal to the Northern Kingdoms, and he's working for Dijkstra. He's working for the Redanian Secret Service. And so it was a bit strange to see him as this sandpiper, and he's smuggling these elves out and stuff. It was a really big departure. I mean, I didn't actually mind it because I did actually really enjoy what they've done with Jaskier in this season. I thought he was actually one of the highlights of the season. Joey Beatty is fantastic in that role. He's great. I also think Henry Cavill's great in his role. There are a bunch of these characters that I actually think they're doing a pretty decent job with, and I do think Dandelion Jaskier is one of them. Dijkstra is not a rambling drunk in the books, although I didn't find that to be a bad change. It was pretty interesting in my opinion. Yeah, I agree. I liked what they were doing with Dijkstra. I liked it. It's a bit different from the books, but I did like him. I liked every scene he was in. I actually thought the scene where the episode he was introduced in, I think it was Redanian Intelligence is the name of the episode. I think that was actually my favourite episode. It might not have been the most faithful or anything. I think the most faithful to the books was probably episode 1, honestly. But I think Redanian Intelligence, I think it was episode 5, maybe it was 4. That was probably my favourite episode of the season, if I'm being honest. That was the one where we got the first look at Jaskier for the season, and also we got the first look at Dijkstra, both in the same episode. So, yeah, for me, that was my favourite episode, probably. I don't believe Istrid even appears in Blood of Elves. Neither do I. I don't think Istrid appears in the books at all after... I believe it's in Sword of Destiny when they do Shard of Ice, but it could be in The Last Wish. It's one of the 2 short story books. He only appears in one of those, and I believe he ever actually appears again in any of them. Francesca Findabar is not with the Scoia'tael in the books. She's a member of the Brotherhood of Sorcerers. Though she does harbour sympathies for their cause, this becomes more relevant when she aids Nilfgaard during the coup at Thanedd. Frangilla Vigo does not become the de facto leader of Sintra in the books. Instead, she fucks off to Nilfgaard. Cahir is not captured by the Brotherhood, following Sodden in the books. I don't even recall if he was at Sodden. As far as I recall, he travelled back to Nilfgaard following the fall of Sintra, and was imprisoned for failing to capture Ciri. Yeah, I don't recall if it was even mentioned if he was at Sodden. It might have been. I don't remember anything about that. I'm actually planning at the moment on rereading the books. The show's left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth, and so I'm going to go back and actually reread all of the books in the next month or so. So feel free to do that with me. Follow along. I'm going to start with the short stories. I'm going to go right through them all. But yeah, he was imprisoned for failing to capture Ciri, and then he's given, basically, spoilers, he's given a bit of a second chance. Amir gives him one last chance, and he's like, okay, you're going to go, and you're going to try and capture and out Thanedd. And obviously then things happen, he fails again, but that's for another time. His execution plot point never happened in the books. Tissaia is hardly a significant character in the books. Yeah, she's not really someone... I've read the books, I've read them twice, and I've listened to the audiobooks once. And in my first couple of listens, going through the books, I wasn't. That was before I saw the show. And it wasn't until I really saw the show that then I actually thought about Tisaya more in the books, because there's only really one or two instances I actually really remember her from the books. There's like one very specific graphic scene. Well, I'm not sure it's that graphic, but there's one really specific impactful scene. Something really impactful happens with her in Time of Contempt at the end of that book. But other than that, I don't really remember all that much about her from the book. She's not a huge presence or anything. Ryan's is not a magical bounty hunter in the books. He's an almost fanatical follower of Vilgefortz in the books instead. Yeah, it was a bit strange seeing him as this bounty hunter, whereas in the books I always kind of saw him as like this pathetic, like creepy but devoted evil guy, and he was like following his master's orders. So it's a bit strange to now see him. I didn't actually mind Ryan's. He was all right. The things I didn't like about him were maybe it was almost just the execution of things, like the fighting. Like, I thought some of the fights with him were just a bit really off. It was a bit stupid. It's like when he goes to Temple of Militila, and they go to capture Ciri with the Michelin brothers, and they all go forwards, and they try to grab her, and she, like, pushes them back. And then, okay, instead of just grabbing her, he puts a ring of fire around her? Like, what? I know movies do this all the time, shows do this all the time, but it really irks me when any sort of media does these so stupid, impractical sort of action sequences. It's something that really bugs me, and I don't enjoy it. When it's like, the classic example is maybe like a superhero movie, right? And there's two guys, they're standing here, and one of them smacks the other one, and he throws him like a mile away. Oh, well, I guess you're just letting them get up and recover, and then they come back and they square up again and they go again. No, it's stupid. What I want to see is you knock him to the ground, get on top of him, and start pounding his face in. That's realism. That's a bit more realism, a bit more realistic. That's a bit more gritty. That's what I want to see. I don't want people throwing you to the other side of the room. It doesn't make any sense. Or it's like when you see monsters. I mean, that happened a few times in this show as well, to be fair. And I do suspend my disbelief a bit. Obviously, it's not going to be entirely realistic. But you see it, it's like monsters. Well, they're just there. They're trying to kill you. They're vicious. They're going to bite you a bit. And they do it to random characters. Okay, so you've got a random character walking through the street. Okay, he's dead. But as soon as it's Geralt or something, it's like, well, actually, we're not going to bite your head off. We're going to go and flick you across the room first. And now we're going to go and try and bite. It's like, it's plot armor, and I understand it, but it does annoy me sometimes, especially in cases where it just didn't seem like it was necessary at all. They didn't have to put a stupid ring of fire around Ciri. It just didn't make any sense. Anyway, Ryan's is scarred in the show in the books, but in the books, because Yennefer uses her magic to wound him while she's interrogating Dandelion. Yeah, I already mentioned that. Lydia does not develop her scars from sniffing a vial of elder blood in the books. Instead, her scars are a result of a magical experimentation on Vilgefortz's orders, and her wounds are hidden with an illusion. Eskel is not turned into a Leshen and then killed, as far as we know. He's not in the books for long. Yeah, to be fair to people who liked this season of the show, I didn't actually care that they killed Eskel. Like, I know a lot of people were really upset about that. Like, oh no, they killed one of the fan favourite characters. I never really cared about Eskel at all. Like, I do not give a damn about it. I just don't. And because he's genuinely a really minor character as far as I'm concerned, he's not in the books very much. I think he's in the first book. He's in Blood of Elves, very, very briefly. He's not got that much to say or do. And that's it, really. He's not really a big presence, so I didn't mind that they killed him. I just thought it was a bit silly how it went down, and I did mind maybe that they changed his character a lot. Like, they actually made him into a different person. He was not acting how he should. Eskel's supposed to be, like, the most serious Witcher. He's supposed to be the serious guy. He's very Witcherish. He would never bring, like, whores back and all the rest of it. So it was just, that annoyed me more than them actually killing him. Vilgefortz and Tisaya are not a romantic thing, as far as I could tell, nor are they even partners. Vilgefortz is also the genuine champion of Sodden in the books. He does it to gain more authority in the Brotherhood. Yeah, it was really strange seeing Tisaya sleeping with Vilgefortz. In the books, she is really, really distrustful of him. Like, she is wary of him. And that's a huge thing, but I guess they've gone away from... And that's kind of the problem here. It's like, I understand making changes, right? And a lot of people are saying, oh, of course they're not going to just copy-paste the books onto the screen. You can't be upset and nitpick. And I get that. And I'm not trying to nitpick. I accept the fact that these are two separate things. It's going to have some changes. And I was really willing to accept that. And I did it in Season 1 as best as I could to separate those two things. And I enjoyed most of Season 1, and I enjoyed most of Season 2, but there are certain things, it just becomes almost, you can't get over it, because this isn't just talking about copy. I'm not saying you need to copy-paste every single page, but you need to have at least some sort of faith to the materials. You have to have some sort of faith to these characters. Tisaya is literally famous for, there's a line in the books where she tells Yennefer, that there is nothing more pathetic than a crying mage. Like, and that's something that Yennefer then tries and imposes onto Ciri and tells her, don't you dare cry. Like, she almost punishes her for crying or showing that sort of negative emotion. Like, this is a huge thing. And then suddenly we've got Tissaia crying in here. I mean, Vilgefortz is more likely to be crying to other people about someone dying or whatever than Tissaia is, like, if you're going by the books. And so the issue here that I'm saying is, it's not just that they've changed some plot points that might not have translated well, they're actually changing the fundamentals of these characters. They are making these characters into people they are not. Yennefer in the show is not Yennefer. She is not even Yennefer from the games. I'm not even just talking about the books. Yennefer in the games would also not be like this. Like, this is a betrayal to both the games and the book fans, because this is not Yennefer. This is, a lot of these characters have just been changed so much that they are no longer that character anymore. They share a name, they may share a bit of a look, but fundamentally they're not the same character. It's like if you took Harry Potter, okay, and okay, what's Neville Longbottom? There's your example, right? So Neville Longbottom's whole thing is, okay, he's a bit stupid, he's a bit whatever, and he's clumsy, but he's brave, and his whole thing is, I'm brave. Harry Potter's not. He's brave, and most of the Gryffindors are brave. And so Neville Longbottom, his whole character arc is, okay, I'm brave, I'm going to stand up, I'm going to do the right thing, I'm always going to do it no matter what happens. Okay, well, what if they took that Neville from the books and they brought him to the show and suddenly, well, actually, Neville's a coward now? You see what I'm saying here? It's like, okay, it's still Neville, I guess, technically, because they've got the same name, he's got the same family, he's got the same look, but you've changed the character fundamentally in a way that didn't need to be done. It doesn't serve as, it's not impossible to adapt that. You've changed the character unnecessarily. And that is a big issue that people have with the show. It's not the fact that they change it from the books. That's not the problem. The problem is they unnecessarily change things that didn't need to be changed. Some things, I agree, needed to be changed. Like the first season of the show, I understand it was a bit all over there with the short stories and they wanted to make it into a different kind of thing. So it was a bit tough to adapt all of that. I understand that. And there were maybe some issues in Blood of Elves with pacing or whatever as well. So I understand there are certain things they want to adapt and change. But the things that they do then change, they cut out so much perfect or good material, or they take a character and they change the character into something that character is not. And that's why people are upset. It's not because they're changing things. Every show changes. Game of Thrones changes things. Lord of the Rings changes things. These all that sort of stuff. They change the materials a little bit, but it's still maybe 80-90% faithful to the original source. There's maybe 10-20% that's different. Whereas in The Witcher's case, it's only 10-20% that's faithful. And it's 80%, 90% that's changed. And that's where the issue is. It's because it's not little changes. It's the majority of it is changing. And that's why people are upset. Anyway, I've ranted enough about that. Vilge is also way stronger and smarter in the books than he's depicted in the show. Also, he never says his classic line, cardinal sin, in my opinion. Yeah, he's basically one of the most powerful mages in the books. And to be fair, we don't actually know how he's being depicted here in the show. There was that scene in season 1 where he loses a fight very quickly to Cahir, but I think people have been theorizing that was he did it on purpose or whatever because he's actually working for Nilfgaard, but we'll see how that goes. And yeah, his classic line, I need to hear him say it about the stars and the sky and the pond, and fantastic line, and I really hope we hear it in season 3. Nenneke is an old and religious lady. She doesn't go around dropping F-bombs in the books. Yeah, this one didn't bother me too much, but it was something I noticed. Nenneke is like this really religious, strict old lady. Yeah, she would never go around just going, fuck. Yeah, it was a bit strange to see, to be fair. Emir kept the fact that Ciri was his daughter a big secret in the books. This is another one of the really big plot points. I was talking about this in my previous video, my review for the entire season, about how, yeah, Emir, the whole thing with Emir is he keeps Ciri being his daughter a secret because he has this plan. He wants to impregnate her because he wants her child, because her child is then going to conquer the world and all the rest of it. And it's something he keeps secret. And when Ciri goes missing, he actually makes a fake Ciri. He gets a fake Ciri, and he's going to marry the fake Ciri because he wants to keep up appearances and he wants to do this, he wants to do that. And so it's really strange to see him just come out and straight away tell everyone, my daughter. And honestly, it ruins so much. It ruins Emir as a character in a lot of ways. I mean, they're changing him, who he fundamentally is. They're changing who Amir and his motivations are. They're changing what this man's motivations are. They're changing him as a character. And it's going to have a huge rippling effect for the rest of the show. I know a lot of people have been talking about how obviously they had to reveal his identity pretty early on to the audience, because if he's on screen, then obviously you're going to see his face, unless they used a different actor or something. Or you could put him in a hood or something, but then you kind of know something's going on. And I agree, because it's kind of hard. You don't actually know who he is until the very last book of the series. So I understand, because he does appear in the books before that. But what I think is they could have shown the audience. They could have had an audience reveal. They could have shown us his face. We could have seen who he was, or even have him talk to himself about something. We could have seen who he was. And then from there, the rest of the characters still don't know. And if the rest of the characters still don't know, then you keep his character intact. You keep his motivations intact. He would still be the same guy he is from the books. It's just that the reveal isn't going to be there later on, because we've already been clued in on who he is, but the other characters would still learn. So later on, you'd still learn, oh, Geralt works it out, or Ciri maybe works it out, or you know what I'm saying? So other characters would work it out themselves, and you would get those really good emotional moments on screen when these characters come to the realization. But instead, everyone knows now. He's just announced it to the world. He's announced it to his whole throne room. He's announced it to Cahir and Fringilla, and that's going to spread. So I just really didn't like what they did with that there. It's like they just don't understand any subtlety, and it's annoying. So now we're on plot points. Except for Ciri's training, there's not a single fight at Kermoren. Never. There's no Leshen, nor is there Centipede with the claws. There's no possession. I don't mind this too much. I don't mind putting some stuff in there. I think that's just because they want to keep some action in every episode in the show. They don't want to have any episodes that are maybe a bit too slow paced. I mean, they could do that, and I wouldn't mind that, but a lot of people, especially coming from the games, they're there for action. And so I do appreciate that they want to spice things up a bit and put some action in, so I don't actually mind that one. There are only 4 Witchers at Kermoren: Vesemir, Eskel, Lambert, Cohen, and then obviously when Geralt arrives. I understand maybe they wanted to add a few more just to sort of pack the place up a bit, but it wasn't necessary. Why don't they just stick to them? It's like they only added in these other Witchers so that then Ciri could kill them off at the end. Like she could go into their bedrooms and stab them. Like that was like the only reason they were even there. At Kermoren, Ciri trains and exercises. Eventually, Triss arrives on Geralt's request and instructs Ciri on the basics of magic, as well as Elder language. The plot point with Ciri's blood being able to make Witchers is not in the books. Vesemir never collects her blood either. The thought of making more Witchers is only ever entertained in the context of Ciri being raised as a girl versus being raised as a Witcher, but the mutagenic process or trial of grasses is never even brought up. In the book, Triss travels with Ciri and Geralt to the temple. In the show, she doesn't. We don't see her get sick. Yeah, in the books, there's a whole thing where they're actually worried about her. She's going to die. They're traveling with the dwarves, and they're going to the temple. And so that was all cut. And I can see that. It was not the. It was a bit of a, I don't know, slow paced. It might not have fit in the season very well. I don't know how they would have put it in. It would have been nice to see, but it's whatever. I don't actually mind that they cut that too much. It's not a huge part of the books, really. In the book, on the path to the temples when they run into Yarp and Zigri again. This doesn't happen in the show. As a result, Ciri doesn't visit Sheroed, and there's no fight with the Scoia'tael. Yeah, sorry, that's a good scene, because Ciri she sees this, she says Sheroed, she sees this sort of ancient elven site, and it is a good moment. There's a really good moment there between her and Geralt and these other elves. Again, I don't think it's necessary though. It's not a huge deal. It's not like they've cut out Brokilon or something, so I can get over that. There's no fight at Melitala's temple in the books. Never. Nope, that's because it's actually in Oxenfurt that fight takes place. Yennefer does not travel to the temple to kidnap Ciri and sacrifice her in the books. In the books, Ciri and Yennefer stay at the temple for a while. Ciri learns more magic. Yennefer is invited to the temple by Geralt after Geralt has already left. See the dear friend bullet point further down. There's no reunion between Geralt and Yennefer in Blood of Elves. They reunite outside Gorz Valen in the next book. So again, this is almost like they're very much rushing and trying to force this whole family concept. They're trying to push it on us really, really early. And I'm not sure it's working out very well. I think it's a bit forced. In the books, Rience does not find Ciri at the temple. Instead, Geralt leaves Ciri in Nenika's care to go find him himself in Oxenfurt. No Shani in the show. That was a shame. Shani was a good character from the books, but yeah, she was a character in Oxenfurt who helps Geralt and Jaskier. Philippa does not help Geralt find Ryan's, nor does she help Ryan's escape, as she does in the books. Yeah, Philippa was a very, very small and weak presence in this show. She spent all the season as an owl. It was a bit strange. In fact, Ryan's doesn't meet Ciri till the Time of Contempt, which is the next book, following Blood of Elves. Dandelion doesn't sing at the tavern in Oxenfurt, he sings at Bleobress. I just butchered that name. A sacred tree. His sandpiper plot is not even a thing in the books. The Elf and Sintra plot is not in the books. There's a non-human uprising in the north in the books, led by the Scoia'tael, but they're not given Sintra as a place of refuge by the Nilfgaardians. Instead, Nilfgaard is suspected of funding them and arming them behind the scenes to stoke instability in the north. The magical politics is a thing in the books, but it's very different from the magical politics in the show. Stregobor does not interrogate or harm Yennefer, and neither do Tissaia or Vilge use that as an excuse to seize council seats. Instead, the magical politics in the books are concerned with the growing distrust between the kings and their magical advisors. The meeting of the kings at the end of Season 2 is the meeting of the kings in Blood of Elves. That puts the mages on edge, and is used to justify the conclave in Time of Contempt. However, Tissaia is at the king's meeting in the show, which is not the case in the books. No mages were invited to the meeting in the books. When the kings of the north meet, they do conclude it's best to kill Ciri, so as to prevent her falling into Emir's hand. They don't want him to have a legitimate claim to the Cintran throne. However, in the show, they cut the talk of the king's war with Nilfgaard. In the books, they believe a quick strike across the Yaruga could recapture Sintra and deal a blow to the south. This conversation paves the way for the Second Great War, but does not happen in the show. The show also leaves out the politics regarding Sintra's throne. Codringer is visited by Geralt in the books, and they develop a plot to essentially smear Calanthe's name and ruin her claim to the Cintran throne, thus making Ciri's claim to the throne illegitimate, thus protecting her from the kings who want her dead for political power. That's a really nuanced and complex plotline in the books, and the show doesn't have anything like that. It doesn't have anything as subtle or nuanced as that sort of political scheming. Everything in the show is way more upfront, in your face. There's none of this sort of underhanded scheming that there is in the books. That's not a knock on the show. That's just a matter of fact. Again, the Volithmir plot, not in the books at all. Instead, Blood of Elves focuses on Ciri's training and planting the seeds for future conflicts. And so, I do understand that they maybe wanted to add something else to add a better conflict, because, as that says, Blood of Elves doesn't really have any major conflict. A lot of it is talking. A lot of it is Ciri training with Geralt, training with Yennefer, training at Melitele. So there is a lot of that. The big conflict really is with Ryan's, and when Geralt goes to Oxenfurt to hunt him down, and he fights the Michelet brothers, and he fights Ryan's. That's really the big one. And so that's why I was also really, really upset that they completely butchered that fight scene in episode 6 of the show. I wish they had at least got that good fight scene down, like made it as good as like they got Blaviken in season 1, I'd have been at least a little bit happy there. But I thought it was just really badly choreographed and really badly done. It didn't sit right with me at all, so I was a bit annoyed. But I guess I understand why then they did the Volithmir thing. It's because they wanted a sort of an ending conflict to the season. They didn't want to just leave it on Ciri training or something like that, if you know what I mean. The monoliths are not a thing in the books. The dear friend bit is in reference to letters exchanged by Yennefer and Geralt, while Geralt is in Oxenfurt hunting for Ryan's. Geralt asks Yennefer to travel to the temple to train Ciri. Again, Geralt and Yen don't actually meet though. In the books, Nilfgaardians are depicted as something more akin to Romans or English, highly centralised government with progressive and aristocratic traditions and legal codes. In the books, they are not religious zealots, though they are also not necessarily good either. Yennefer and Cahir never have a team up in the books. Yeah, do they even meet? They might meet like at the end of the last book, very, very briefly before some bad stuff happens. But yeah, maybe they meet for 5 minutes at most, that's it. Tissaia does not recommend that Ciri be captured, nor does she suggest that anyone protecting her be captured as well. In fact, Tissaia's role in the show is dramatically overblown. We already covered that. Ciri is not with Geralt when he meets Nivellen. I was actually fine with that. Like, it makes sense. They're adapting that short story a little bit later. That was fine. Istrid does not meet with Codringer and Fen in the books. Geralt does meet them to find out information about Ryan's and Ciri. It's not an exaggeration to say that the majority of this season is different from the books, and not just sort of different, but drastically different. Hell, the last 4 or 5 episodes are fictitious in nearly every way. At this point, I'm not certain where the story will go. Yeah. So, I like what they're saying here is this, for example, how will the coup play out on Thaned if Ciri won't be able to attend it? And if Ciri isn't at Aretuza for the coup, then how will she be warped to the desert? If she isn't separated from Geralt and Yennefer, then how does she even meet up with the rats? How does she meet Bonnar? How does Tower of the Swallow happen? How does she meet Visigotta? How does all this stuff happen? Yeah. Note that this isn't necessarily a good or bad thing as long as it's done well, but there has to come a point where the adaptation is so drastically different from the source material that I start to wonder whether it's truly an adaptation or if it's a reimagining. And that's where I'm at, folks. That's exactly my thoughts right now. I don't believe this is an adaptation anymore. It's a reimagining. And I think if they had advertised it as that from the start, they wouldn't be getting as much backlash. The reason it gets hate from maybe book readers and stuff is because they literally spent like 3 years, 4 years advertising, hyping this show up as, oh, the book readers are going to love this. Everyone's going to love this. The game fans will love it. We've got things for everyone in here. We're being faithful to the source material. I remember before Season 1 came out, it was a whole meme going around. And people kept saying, we're adapting the fucking books. We're not adapting the games. Like, the whole cast, the showrunners were saying, we need to forget about the games. We're adapting the books. We're adapting the books. We're adapting the books. They said it over and over again. And then it comes out and they've butchered so much of it. Like, it's basically false advertising at that point. Like, they've lied to people. They've lied to us that this is going to be so faithful. It's going to be this, it's going to be that. And it's just not. It really isn't. I'm going to continue making Witcher videos. I'm going to hope things improve. If there's any specific Witcher stuff you'd like to see me cover, leave a comment down below. I might do more reviews, maybe for individual episodes of the Season 2. I might do some mini videos about the books as I'm rereading them as well. I'm not sure yet. I'm going to think through some stuff. If you like this video, leave a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more Witcher content or content about other shows and movies and whatever as well. See you all next time.